This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Carly.
Hi, Carly.
Hi.
I am very tired tonight, so I am going to have to cut out a little bit early again, just so you guys have a heads up on that. But I'm really glad I came, and I'm really glad you guys all came tonight. Rick, I did need to check with you really quick when our next meeting date is. Wanted to make sure we have that at the front.
It
I know it's
is, I think, the 28th of January.
28th, okay. Because I know we've been jumping around a lot with holidays last month and this month, so we'll get back to our usual schedule.
Yeah, the usual schedule of Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's Frank. Well, Mike.
There's Frank.
Mike, are you still on the phone? I don't know if you've muted yourself or not. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Well, we're all a little familiar with one another, but maybe we could go and do a round table. And Gale, if you wanted to introduce yourself in the chat box. Frank, do you want to get us started?
Sure. What do you want? What do you need to know? Just who I am?
Yeah. What did we do the last time? Who you are, where you're from, and when you were diagnosed.
Okay, I'll get you started. I'm Frank Austin. I am from a little bitty village in the middle of Kansas, believe it or not, Plainville. And I've had MS been diagnosed for 20 years. Actually, I've probably had symptoms. My first exacerbation was about 37, 38 years ago. It just took them 15 years to diagnose it. I'm a single guy. I'm retired. I'm loving life. And I mentioned a little while ago, my niece was on last month or the last meeting. She is being tested for MS, and it does look like she probably does have it. She's got 3 lesions that they're being slow to diagnose for some reason. We've got an aunt that has MS, and I've got a sister that has MS. So it's definitely a family trait. But I've been involved with the MS Society for 20 years. Been on the government relations committees in California, Pennsylvania, and now back here in Kansas again. And I'll do anything I can for the MS cause anytime I can. So that's my story, and I guess I have to stick to it.
Thanks, Frank. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mike Pettypool. I live in southern Arizona, not far from Rick Davis, who introduced me to all of you. I've had MS I was diagnosed in 97, 98, and 20 years ago. And but I was told in the early 90s that I would get MS. I would having these relapses and so on. And I've been on the drugs. First of all, they put me on Biogen's drug, which is a weekly injection, and I preferred that to the daily. And that turned out not to work for me because I'm one of the few people who have an antibody to that drug. So after about 5 years of using that, I had a really bad episode, lost sight in one eye and stuff like that. But then they put me on Copaxone, and I've been good since. And that was in 2001, I believe. And I'm glad to be here. Glad to know I haven't really been involved with MS groups and people, so it's good to be a part of this group. You know?
Well, yay.
I'll put the microphone back to our moderator.
Gale, would you like to introduce yourself in the chat so we can kind of get to know you that way? In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. I'm Carly. I'm from a Detroit suburb. I was diagnosed I was 26, so about 7.5, 8 years in. And I actually thankfully got diagnosed really quickly. It does not run in my family. I have a very distant cousin who has MS, but it's my grandfather's stepsister's daughter. So not close at all. Though I do have a cousin who has an X-linked genetic condition who has very similar symptoms to mine, but different. So some family trait there.
Okay.
Dan and Jen?
You
Well-
have something. You have something from Gale in the chat window there.
That's what I was
I
going
was
to
going to say, that's awesome, Gale.
Hi. Hi, Gale.
So I guess if you don't mind, where in Texas are you at? I'm thinking just in terms of like knowing people down there to like connect you with people if you want it.
Houston.
Okay.
We can look and see.
Yeah, because we know some people down in Texas. I mean, not that, we're like forcing all these contacts on you or something, but it's just that way, because just October. So welcome to the group and everything. This is great to have you here. I think this is just very informal, and we're just doing our thing, really. I mean, I was diagnosed over 20 years ago, married to my lovely wife Jennifer, who
I was diagnosed 22 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And my grandmother had multiple sclerosis. So I'm with you, Frank. I think that there's something, Dan and I lead a support group here in Michigan. That's where we're from as well as Carly. But we lead a support group here in Michigan, and we have two members we have a brother and sister that both have MS. And then one of our members who passed away had MS, crazy big in her family. Not that we're doubting you, Nicole. I'm just saying that there is something that we're curious about.
Oh no, so I know there's definitely a genetic component because like you're saying a lot of families, like there is a larger percentage of relatives that have it. So of course there's something in DNA for those families, but we can't really pinpoint what it is.
I think what we have always said, Dan and I, is there's a genetic component, but it's not necessarily a heredity. Or hereditary. Thank you, babe. Yeah.
Interesting. Actually, I worked with a guy in St. Clair Shores who both of his sisters and he all had it. And I think one of his parents did too.
I think that's probably why it's so hard to find a treatment that works for everybody, because the disease is so crazy different. And, there can be siblings on one hand, and then there's somebody like Dan who MS is not in his family at all.
I know of. And that just makes me feel like a trailblazer. So in the Digman line of genes and stuff, I'm the first. So I got that going for me.
Mike, sorry, Mike, where do you fall on this? Do you know people within your family, or do you think there's some sort of in your history?
I have a couple of great uncles or cousins with MS. And I'm also from Michigan, I know, and they're also in Michigan. So I know there's a geographic as well as possibly a genetic component. But more than that, I can't say. I'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah. What about you, Gale?
Have you like born and raised in Texas?
Yeah,
I'm interested too with Gale, being that you've just been diagnosed in October. Have you started any sort of meds yet? Oh, second cousin.
Wow.
So we should read out the chat window for the benefit of Mike, because he's not on the computer. So so we have to read.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
Read out
Yes,
about Gale. Maybe you can just fill him in on Gale and what she's saying in the chat window.
So Mike, Gale says that she is a second cousin who has MS. And Gale, are you on any meds yet, or are you still trying to determine which is the best course of action for you?
So this is
Oh, okay. Once or twice talking on Ocrevus, which is what I'm also on.
And it was interesting, you know, Jennifer and I were on a live chat earlier and just talking about treatments, and it's just really interesting how many people are either taking or going to take Ocrevus, and I think that's just like, you know, the heavy hitters that come out. Oh.
She added, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off, but she had typed in the chat box here that she had shingles, and she needs to get the vaccine and booster first. I actually got shingles in my first half dose too, so I feel you on that one.
It's a double whammy. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Carly, you
That's good, though.
You got shingles with your first dose of Ocrevus?
Yeah, because they split the first dose into half. So the first half dose, I got shingles, and they had to wait until it cleared up before they could finish. And at that point, it was the double-blind, double-dummy part of the study. So my neurologist said you don't get shingles from rebirth. So I didn't figure with the first go-around.
As far as you know, is that fairly common?
I don't really know. I have heard other people have gotten it, but the study, I think that we had at the DMC, there's like 8 of us, but I know it's a much larger study than that.
Okay. It's interesting.
It's interesting because I had shingles before my first exacerbation, and the doctors actually thought that it may have been the shingles that were the tripwire that caused the MS to appear.
Really? Interesting.
And is it as painful as everyone says it is? As we just saw something on the news about that, and I'm just thinking, just thinking, please don't just save me from that, because it sounds like it's just horrid.
Yeah, it's my experience because it was pretty horrid. I caught it really early because they told me to watch out for a rash, so it never actually blistered. But it was pretty painful for weeks. I mean, it's nerve damage.
You have to be very careful that it doesn't get in your eyes.
Yes. Well, mine was actually like on my back. put right on my pants line. So I wore yoga pants for like 2 months.
Mine was right on our forehead, right in this area.
Okay.
How about you, Gale?
Ooh. Like she said, my numbness more than doubled in a week during her shingles.
Wow. Yeah, because I've noticed that anytime I'm sick, like with a cold or, flu or something, it just amplifies every MS symptom I have, not necessarily meaning that the MS is worse. It's just irritated that moment. That's so not cool. But then Gail, are you, you're like you're over the shingles then?
I don't know what Gail's experience was, but mine, I think, took like 7 weeks once I actually got medication to take care of that for it to be essentially done. But the pain lasted probably 6 months. I don't know what your experience was, Frank. Gail
Oh,
says
so-
got over the shingles, but my increased numbness
Remained.
so some.
wow.
What's that?
Are you, if you've had the shingles, can you get it again?
I think so.
I
Okay.
think so. It's just the chicken
Yeah.
pox.
Well,
Right. It's not like the chicken pox where you only get it once, though. You can have
Right.
shingles several times.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it's
you,
kind of does like a midline, like how Bell's palsy on your face only will do one side. Shingles will stay on one half or half of your body, wherever it ends up being. So, Frank, if yours was around your eye, mine was from my spine to like, that's as far as it went. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm tired. I'm sorry.
I have heard that there's a vaccine for shingles or a shingle shot. Do you have
Yes.
to, I mean, can you, like, once you've had shingles, can you still have the vaccine or?
Yes.
Can you?
Yeah. I've had the shingles and I've had the vaccine.
And is that supposed to prevent it from coming back?
Well, that's what they say.
I was going to say, or is the shingles vaccine like a lot of our disease modifying therapies? It's not guaranteed. You're just increasing the chances that it won't happen.
They say it's a vaccine, so
Yeah.
theoretically it shouldn't come back. Notice I said theoretically.
I was going to say theoretically.
What about you, Mike? Have you ever had experience with shingles?
Luckily, I've never had chicken pox.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to get it. So don't give me your cooties if we meet, please.
I think you're far enough away from Michigan. You're safe.
Unless you come home to visit family.
Don't know.
Wow.
No recollection.
So we just spent quite a long time on the previous group. We spent quite a lot of time talking about Shingrix, which is the vaccine that I see that Gale has just used, which is supposedly a lot better than the old vaccine, but you have to get it in 2 lots. And one of the guys actually mentioned that he had a real mild case of a rash, not as bad as shingles because he'd had that before, but after his first vaccine shot, he did have a reaction to it. So I don't know if that applies to you. My question was whether there's any relation between the drugs that you're taking and shingles. I mean, do you think that the drugs you're taking may result in some sort of a comorbidity? or not?
How do you mean?
Well, is there any relation between Ocrevus and being more likely to get shingles? Does it affect your immune system in any way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a B depleting agent, so it wipes out your immune system. That's why that's one of the things that they tell you to be aware of. I don't know statistically like what the increased rate is, but I do think that is one of the side effects. I don't know if it's one that's like listed on TV when they do the ads now, but I believe so.
Frank,
I never had shingles before, though I know my mom had shingles, and my grandmother on my dad's side. I've had shingles too.
So with my trusty smartphone, looking up MS, disease-modifying therapies, and shingles, this is an article from 2014 that says people with MS who take Gilenya are more likely to develop an infection with whatever virus or shingles, according to a study published in the Journal of Neurology, whatever. Several top specialists collaborated to evaluate shingles risks and recommended ways to manage it. The group determined that people with MS who are on Gilenya are nearly twice as likely to develop shingles as MS patients not on a disease-modifying therapy, although the overall risk is still relatively small. So, and that's just one of the 15, 16 therapies we have available. But I mean although that could that be a selling point of all the other MS drugs to say, well, you take our med, you're not going to get shingles. So
It might. I don't know.
yeah.
Well, Frank, were you on a DMT when you were diagnosed with shingles?
Who was the question to?
It was to Frank. Were you taking anything?
No, it was before I was diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
It was before my first exacerbation.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You said that you thought that was what kind of triggered
That's
the
what the doctors,
diagnosis.
what the tripwire was that created the shingles or the MS. I don't buy that, but that's what they said was a possibility.
I want to test the theory a little bit. So my theory is that it's hormone related, and I just think for myself, that's how I feel. But I know it was triggered. My exacerbation was triggered by stress, and isn't shingles a stress reaction?
It is.
And it's autoimmune to boot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like the perfect storm with multiple sclerosis and stress and yeah.
Wow.
I mean, because that's how my symptoms would come, is monthly for me, and they would subside as soon as I was done with my monthly.
So hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
There are just so many things with this disease. There are so many avenues that researchers could investigate. That's why we're all so fascinated.
And I always wonder too, because I'm not going to be having children naturally, but a lot of women that I've spoken to, because they always have an exacerbation after they have children, that makes me think there might be some sort of hormonal.
That's when my grandmother was diagnosed after she gave birth to my uncle. And she lost the feeling on one side of her body. So I'm with you, Carly. I can see a hormonal link. But then what does that explain with men?
But yeah, it's like, yeah, what's
Well,
that?
I mean, men have hormone levels levels too that vary throughout the month.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. If I had finished my PhD, I was going to study it on the cycle of men, because I think
Really?
that's a whole other conversation.
I'm not even going to go there.
But I will say I'd like to have that conversation with you because in the field that I do most of my moderation and I have the most amount of knowledge is prostate cancer, and most men with advanced prostate cancer have no testosterone in their body. So, and I did that treatment for 2.5 years myself, so I know the treatment. And so they're wrestling with menopausal symptoms, and the fact that men have a hormone cycle could possibly explain certain responses that they have. It could also affect some of the markers. So one of these days, Carly, we'll have a little chat about that. You can tell where were you going to do that? Where were you studying?
I have no idea. I applied to grad school again, but I'm going to be going for like talk therapy.
For what therapy?
For like behavioral therapy.
Oh, for behavior. Well, you could talk to Nicole, who decided to do genetic counseling. That's an interesting field.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you at Wayne State? You're at Wayne State, aren't you, Nicole?
Yes, Wayne State.
Oh, I spoke to someone there when I was at DMC from the department. So this is a total side note, Nicole, but I have XALD. I'm a carrier for, and so I spoke to a genetic counselor while at the DMC. Mm-hmm. That's the X-linked genetic disorder that my cousin has.
Oh, okay.
He was 35 in 2020. So, yeah.
Something I was gonna ask. I mean, just because Rick, you brought it up as far as like the testosterone and everything. You know, and this is just something. Maybe I'm just like thinking outside of my head or something. But you know, when they say like men or women are more likely to have MS, like what the percentages are, like 60 some percent to 30, whatever percentage of women have versus men. It's like just after I was diagnosed with MS, after all the blood tests and stuff they did, the doctor said I had low levels of testosterone. And so I was taking, I had to take like supplements and stuff to increase. So then I was chalking that up saying, well, I got MS because I have low testosterone. But that, that's just my simpleton hormonal genetic scientist thing, but you're just thinking, could that have been something? But I think that, not every man with MS has low testosterone levels, but it's just like, it is interesting. Although then too, there's the research that was done with women when they're pregnant who have MS, whose symptoms aren't as, prevalent. Yeah, when they're pregnant, that they have some reprieve, I suppose. But then, like you say, after they have the baby, that it rears its ugly head. So I don't know. The disease, not their baby. So
Well, Mike or Frank, I don't know where you guys land on this. Do you know if you had low T or not?
I have no knowledge about testosterone.
Okay.
I don't think I have low testosterone, but
That's not something I've had. Excuse me.
And Gale, I'm curious too. We haven't heard from you in a little bit, kind of where you land on this.
Yeah, I mean, what I was hearing Jen say was that that the hormonal cycle affects the severity of your MS symptoms. So at certain times of the month that your MS symptoms are going to be worse, either when you've got more or less estrogen in your body, or androgens, because it may be more or less testosterone as well. I mean, is that sort of is that the concept?
Well, what's interesting is Gale had just posted that her symptoms began during menopause in her late 50s. So again, that's just a different fluctuation of hormones. I think that would be an interesting area to study, is just how hormones affect multiple sclerosis. So much to
Yeah, for Mike's benefit, Gail just posted my symptoms began during menopause in my mid to late 50s. So, but I mean, this is another question I have about MS. Are there different types of MS, and do certain types of MS affect younger people and other types of MS affect older people? Does it break out in categories at all?
I mean, there are categories, but we're all going to be affected different. The way it was explained to me when I get diagnosed is we're all snowflakes, and that's pretty accurate.
Well, yeah, because it's like the relapsing, remitting, and secondary progressive, primary progressive, and and then they keep adding different things, and others will say we're all, everybody's progressive MS because the disease is always progressing, whether you can see it or not.
The interesting thing to me about MS is going back, and I'm going to go back to 1990. Okay, prior to 1990, MS was not an issue in Kuwait. Didn't have it. Wasn't there. After the Gulf War, suddenly Kuwaitis developed MS. And I really believe that was a function of now this is me now, a function of the pollutants that were released during all the oil fires. And it's interesting to me that all of the states, even here in the United States, that have the highest MS are in the north, where people are inside more, where they're got less natural replacement of the atmosphere. And I believe, this is me now, that women standing over stoves cooking, they ingest more pollutants than men that go outside and work on the outside. Now that's me. And that's why I also believe that that's why, if you look at the long-term effects, that's why you see a lower prevalence of MS in the Black population and in the Latino population, because historically they have been more outside and lived in areas where there was more exchange of the atmosphere, and on and on and on. But that's me now. I'll shut up.
Actually, I think you're not that far off, Frank. I'm not sure about the last part of it, but part of my hormone theory is they have been injecting the animals that we eat with antibiotics for decades now, and we're ingesting that. I hadn't thought about actually cooking of the food, but thankfully my husband does a lot of the cooking.
Ditto.
That's an interesting theory, though.
you know, and I always joke that, you know, I grew up in Iowa and then I moved to Michigan and got diagnosed with MS. I always tell Jennifer I was healthy till I moved to Michigan. But I mean, it's just like, you know, with the northern, you know, the Midwestern, those who, because obviously, yeah, you don't, well, the thing with the vitamin D, or how they say, you know, closer to the equator, it's just like people get more sunlight, and it's,
Again, there are so many theories.
yeah, so many theories, so many, you know, so many things, because, yeah.
It's,
But then it's always like, okay, then it's like, okay, I've got the disease. So on some levels, it's like, you know, for me, you can find the treatment, you can find the cause. It's like, then I'll be selfish and say, how are you going to fix me? You know, and how do we, and that gets back then to the drugs that don't cause shingles and, whatever, slow the progression and whatnot. I think it's, because then, you know, what are those, you know, multi-million-dollar drugs we're putting into ourselves doing to our health, you know, like with that, when you're talking about ingesting things. I'll get off my soapbox. They were just questions.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Frank. I think, were you muted? I saw you trying to say something.
What are the unintended consequences of all of our treatments? Because we don't know.
Exactly. You
Right.
know, and we wondered too, just like, you know, when we talk about, I don't know if I brought this question up here before, but it's like, so often it's like when people are starting new treatments and everything, everyone's concerned about the side effects and what does that do to you. And I'm always wondering, are the side effects of the drugs we're taking worse on us than the disease itself? You know, it's just like, because I can handle the numbness. It's the flu-like symptom. You know, I'm doing fine with it, but I think that's why I'm afraid to try any kind of new medication because of the side effects. You know, I've tolerated the beta-seron for 20 years. Why would I switch? You know, but if there ever came a time, I don't know what drug I would take, and I see all the side effects, and I'm thinking I can handle what I'm dealing with right now.
Mike and Gale, what meds were you guys on? I'm sorry, I don't think we had covered that. And
I'm on Copaxone.
gotcha. Okay.
I've been for almost 20 years, and I've had 2 or 3 relapses. The last one was the worst, but I've always come back to the pretty close to my baseline until recently. So I had no intention of looking around for other solutions. I don't need a solution, looking for a problem. I'm glad are now more than a dozen drugs that are available to the MS community that there weren't before. That's great.
How many of you are on Ocrevus? And other than Carly, is anybody else on Ocrevus?
Gale was considering it, I think.
I would say isn't Gale at that.
Gale said that she hopes to start Ocrevus in early 2020.
Okay. I mean, I'm just curious. I talked to somebody today who we've been supporting, and he mentioned his wife has MS. He didn't know about the call. I let them know this afternoon, but it was a bit soon. But she's on Ocrevus as well. And I'm just wondering if Ocrevus is a relatively new drug that, since it's still in trial, that appears to be having more success than some of the older drugs, or not?
Well, Ocrevus is FDA approved now, but I've been in the study for a long time. They're still continuing that.
I see.
Right.
I think that Ocrevus is one of the newer medications that's available, and it's a little more targeted, or I don't know if it's fair to say a little more tough, or not tough, but just some of the earlier drugs that were available. I don't know if they had the efficacy or the results that Ocrevus is having, but Ocrevus is, you read a lot about it now. And because there are so many medications available for a newly diagnosed person, I think it's overwhelming. And they tend to look at what's new and what has really good results, and that seems to be Ocrevus right now.
And that was the first drug to that was approved for progressive forms of the disease. Everything else up to that point were just for the relapsing remitting form. And so now Ocrevus, and that Ocrevus is available for relapsing remitting and primary progressive.
Yes.
And is it taken in different doses for relapsing and remitting than if you have progressive?
Know what's really interesting, Rick? From what I've seen or what I've heard, is it's an infusion that's delivered twice a year. So a lot of the earlier medications were injections, like the Copaxone is a shot that you take every day, or the Avonex is once a week, or so this having an infusion twice a year gives you so much more freedom than having to take an everyday medication of an injection or a pill. So
Sure.
that's something that they talk about is really good.
Yeah, Gale writes, by the way, Mike, Gale writes that he was diagnosed with primary progressive MS. So,
So Gail, how are you doing? You were relatively newly, obviously recently diagnosed.
My heart goes out to you, Gale.
yeah. And how do they, whilst we're waiting for Gail to reply, how do they determine the type of MS that you have? How do they determine whether it's primary progressive or relapsing and remitting? I mean, are there biopsies? Are there tests they can do? How do they identify the type?
Based on the resiliency? Is it based on the resiliency after the exacerbation? Actually, I don't really know the answer.
I don't really know that there's a really conclusive answer. I know some people, when they're diagnosed, as a matter of fact, we were just talking with someone tonight who, when she was diagnosed, just based on the number of lesions she had, her doctor felt confident or comfortable to say that she had a more progressive form of the disease. But that's a really good question, Rick. I'm not exactly sure. When I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting, but through the course of the disease, I kept not returning back to that baseline, and I just started to worsen. So I think that might be one way.
Well, I was initially diagnosed with relapsing and remitting, and later I stopped having exacerbations, and I just started having a slowly progressing disease course. So I wasn't having the relapses anymore, but I was getting worse a little bit at a time. And that's the way it's been for the last 15 years.
Oh. I mean, does the disease have a habit of suddenly progressing quick?
The disease can mutate, I think, or range from relapsing, remitting, and move toward more progressive for some people. And if that's Frank, I feel sorry for you too.
I know I consider myself very lucky, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 20, 30 years, and I still can get up and move around without having to be in the chair. I mean, granted, I have to use a walker, but I can still get up and take care of myself. So I'm certainly not going to complain. But I can also say that, again, my last exacerbation, the doctors say it was in 2005. And since that time, it's just been, they changed my diagnosis to secondary progressive, and it's been just a constant slow downhill slide. And all in all, I'll take it over what I see other people having to deal with.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mike, but I am going to sign off for tonight. I have a big event at work tomorrow, and it was a pleasure talking to all of you. I hope to see you again in January.
Anyway, well, thank you, Carly. Go get some sleep and have a good Christmas, have a good New Year's, and we'll talk to you the end of January.
Good night.
Thank you. Same to you.
Good night.
Bye. Bye. Good night. Good night. I mean, this is very helpful for me, who really doesn't understand. I don't understand MS that well. Can the disease rapidly progress at any point, or is it always sort of a steady downhill slope?
Now, there are people that are progressive quite rapidly, and it's as individual. I mean, it's the luck of the draw. Good luck, bad luck.
Kind of
Because I mean, I'm listening to you, Frank, and to Mike, and to Dan, and Jennifer, and both of you have been all of you have been living with this disease for a long time.
Right. Well, and that's where, I mean, that's like with Jennifer and me, you just see, you know, because she was diagnosed in 97, I was diagnosed in 2000, and you just see how it affects everybody differently. I mean, because after we got married, I mean, she can't walk, and I was out running 5Ks, and relatively living with the disease for about the same amount of time. It's just like how it just affects everyone differently.
Well, and then Gale has just typed in, here's another case. She said that when she was diagnosed, she was having numbness in both of her legs. But her symptoms, when her first symptoms began, they went away, but it slowly worsened. And her doctor diagnosed her with primary progressive MS. So it's just, the constant symptoms for Gale. And now she's going on Ocrevus, and Gale, I hope that works for you. I hope that gives you some relief and slows down the progression.
When I was diagnosed, I don't know if you, Frank and Mike, I mean, because you'd been living with it, just like, I was diagnosed in 2000, reading reports, and they were saying like the course of multiple sclerosis, it's like people are diagnosed with relapsing remitting, but then by about the 10-year mark, most people go to secondary progressive, and it's like, when I hit my 10-year anniversary, I felt any year after that I was living on borrowed time, that the disease was going to come and sneak up on me. So I think it's how your body responds, and yeah.
Well,
I think we were all diagnosed around the same time, and there were drugs you take that prevent or suppress the disease from progressing, and or not, whatever the answer is, we're all benefiting from that. So we may have progressive or Yeah, secondary progressive, but we're not showing the symptoms because we're on whatever drug that slows that down.
Yeah. I agree with you, Mike. And I don't mean to be flip, so please understand, I hope not to offend anyone. But we have someone in our support group that says every day I wake up above ground is a good day. And so on my bummer days, when I don't feel well, I just have to remember at least I'm alive, and maybe it's not ideal, but we are, we're alive.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot from the people that I do, that I work with in other areas of support, and especially with cancer, that they're feeling, if they're feeling well and they don't notice any side effects, that's exactly the same thing that they say, Jen. So it's very familiar to me. I also had something else earlier on that was very interesting, which is that a lot of cancer drugs, with cancer, a lot of times it's asymptomatic until it's so far along that there isn't much you can do about it. And so what happens is people start taking these drugs and they don't have any symptoms and they get really sick, and they are angry at the drugs. At the same time, they're grateful that the drugs are saving their life. And I'm dealing with guys like that all the time. They don't have any symptoms from the cancer. All of their symptoms come from the drugs.
Yep.
That's not the case, I don't think, with your disease. But
my old mentor that I was talking about last meeting had another saying, and I please do not take this wrong, but he had another saying about MS, and there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is MS won't kill you. Bad news is MS won't kill you.
That is, speak the truth.
And I mean, we go through it. It's up and down. There's an emotional side to it that we all have to learn to deal with.
Well, and I think that's why this group is so important, is that, we have that support with the people that we talk to, and so that you're not alone.
yeah. Now, speaking of which, how was your trip for Thanksgiving to your folks? Did it all go down well, Jen?
Yes, it went very well, thank you. And the weather, Michigan, the Michigan God smiled on us. We had nice weather, so it went very well, thank you. How about your Thanksgiving? How about everybody else?
Well, I had an interesting Thanksgiving. I went across the border. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and then I ran into some people about 3 or 4 days before Thanksgiving, and they have a family restaurant down in Nogales. And they said, "We're going to Nogales. Why don't you come with us?" And that's what I did. So I went over the border and went to this restaurant. It's probably about 3 or 4 miles south of the border. And it was great. There was like 40 odd people seated on either side of a very long banquet table. And it was a lot of fun. So, I guess a lot of Mexicans celebrate Thanksgiving as an indigenous people's holiday as well. But it was great. So that was me. How about you, Mr. Pettypool? How was your Thanksgiving?
That was wonderful, Rick. Thanks for asking. we go to a ranch and visit with some friends for the last 5 or 6 Thanksgivings, and the weather wasn't great. Of course, it was raining, but and every Thanksgiving disappoints me because the Lions find a way to lose. But the turkey and dinner and drinks was just great.
Okay. Okay.
How about you,
Well,
Frank?
I went to a Mexican restaurant for Thanksgiving, believe it or not, and had my share of margaritas. And I'm a carnitas guy, so I had pork for Thanksgiving. I didn't do the poultry at all, but I love my carnitas. So
okay.
and they do serve a big margarita. So
Nice.
Okay.
What about
Well,
you, Gail? Were you able to celebrate Thanksgiving, or was it just too much going on in your life at that time?
Well, Gail's answering us. I just wanted to say, Frank, that I went to a Mexican restaurant, but they gave us all turkey. It was all plated in the kitchen. So it was turkey, mashed potatoes, a sweet potato, and a couple of other things. It was very good. I have no problem with it.
carnitas, rice, beans, and tortillas.
We have to get you down here. Mike and I will show you some good Mexican restaurants down this way. So yeah, we have a couple of good ones even here in Tubac. So we're only 20 miles north of the border here. So that food is very, very popular. Do we hear anything from Gale yet? No, she's still typing. She's still busy typing, trying to tell us. And what about? Wait a minute. How about Nicole? Let's not forget Nicole. How was your Thanksgiving?
Pretty good. I couldn't fly back home, so my program director invited me to have Thanksgiving with her family, which was really nice. So I went there.
Where is home, Nicole?
Philadelphia.
Nice.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately, or fortunately, Gail said that she had a nice Thanksgiving, but she broke her ulna bone in her forearm from a fall and subsequent surgery that previous week. But she still said she had a nice Thanksgiving. Attitude is everything, Gail.
For you, Gail. We're very pleased. We're pleased to hear that.
She said that she had dinner with her family and her elderly mom.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So are you going to get back to Philadelphia for Christmas, Nicole?
Yes, so this week is my last week of school, and then I'm flying back early next week.
Nice.
And you said that you're here in Michigan going to school, Nicole?
Yes.
Wayne State?
Yes.
Okay. Nice. What year are you?
So it's a 2-year program, so I'm in my second year.
Okay.
Wow.
So are you close to being finished?
Very close. I only have a couple more months left.
Congrats.
Thank
Finish strong.
you.
Wow.
And then where do you think you might finish up working? Where would you like to be?
I kind of want to go back to the East Coast just because that's where my family is. So maybe Pennsylvania or New York.
Well, I think it's a burgeoning field. I think there's more and more interest every day in both germline and in somatic testing. And we actually spend a lot of time talking about it in our groups. I mean, a question came up today as to whether a sample taken 5 years ago would show the same microsatellite instability as a sample taken today, because people are trying to figure out if they're eligible for drugs. And I've got it on my piece of paper here that I've got to write to a couple of the docs I know to ask them those questions. But you know, they do have a great BRCA center at University of Pennsylvania in the Abramson Cancer Center. They have a whole group that's just dedicated to BRCA. So, but I don't think you'll have any trouble finding a job. I would be surprised. When do you start looking, and how do you look for a job?
So I've actually started looking, but so we have like a national organization, so they post jobs on there, like a job board, and then there's just regular web searches like Indeed, Monster, things like that.
Right. And are there more jobs than there are geneticists?
Yes.
Or genetic counselors, I should say?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, that all sounds very, very positive. So what advice do you have, if any, for the MS community when it comes to genetics and genes and genetics? Anything?
I'm not really sure, but like if you're seeing a genetic counselor, just be sure to really voice the majority of your concerns, because if you don't bring it up, we can't really do anything about it. And if we don't know the answer at that point, we can contact someone who does and then get back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that is that's certainly a good way to start pushing the envelope on this aspect that we started off with, whether there is a genetic aspect, a mutation aspect to MS or not.
Well,
I
and
mean, certainly.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Jen.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's very true, Nicole, like what you were saying. And I'm sure Frank will agree, and Mike and Gail. This is one thing that I think is really important, is you have to be your own best advocate. You
Oh,
have
yeah.
to ask those questions, and you have to make sure that you understand. Like you said, Nicole, if you have questions, push to get the answers. And just because right now there's so much going on and there's so much information out there, you really have to stand up for yourself.
And there's so much bad information out there too. I mean, you've really got to get into it and make sure you're getting good info, because there's as many flakes out there as there are good people out there.
That's for true.
Well, that's where you find the credible resources as a starting point and stuff to like give you direction and everything to get the answers. And
I mean, what is going to be interesting, hopefully, is that perhaps if they find that there is a genetic component, they identify the genetic component, then they can start identifying some of these precision drugs that are being used right now. And of course, that would make a huge difference. And that's really where we are in other diseases like cancer at this point in time. So there's hopefully things will change. I mean, in the last 10 years, I've seen cancer treatment change almost 180 degrees. So hopefully that will come to your condition before too long. Yeah. Is there a lot of research going on in MS? I mean, clearly not enough, but is it a well-researched disease?
Absolutely. I feel pretty comfortable saying that there's just so many different avenues to research. But just
Mm-hmm.
look at, you know, when Dan and I were diagnosed, or, you know, when we were diagnosed in the late 90s, there were 3 available medications to treat MS, and now there are 15, 16 different treatment options. So that, you know, medication is one way that you can see that research is being done.
And I think then just with like the myelin repair and just doing things to try and fix the conditions and stuff, and that, you know, this do away with the symptoms. I mean, to where people could actually walk again. I mean, I think it's got a lot of attention. I think it's, you know, moving forward, just never at a fast enough pace, but it all takes time.
One thing I just sort of housekeeping thing that I did want to mention, both for you, Dan and Jen, and for Gale, is that you can give GoToMeeting a call at some point, and they should be able to troubleshoot with you why you cannot get either your audio going properly or your camera going properly. They're pretty good about that. They just did that for somebody else that has some issues in another one of our groups earlier on in the week. And I put that number, the number is 872 582 7011. I put it in the chat window, so you can give them a call a little bit later if you like, and they'll help you figure out why it isn't working like it should.
Well,
Yeah.
Whatever the issue is.
thank you. And I think another housekeeping duty is, Gail, if you can send us your email address or some way that we can communicate, so that we can stay in touch until our next meeting. Not to be pushy or anything, but just, you know, if you sign up for the website mailing list, you'll get a reminder of when the next meeting is. And then a lot of us are on Facebook and we're friends that way, so we can stay in contact that way.
Yeah, and the next meeting, by the way, reverts back to our regular schedule, which is the 4th Tuesday of the month at the same time. At the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Mike, what else is going? Anything else that's on your mind that has that's MS related or even not MS related?
Well, no, I have one. I spoke last time about my neurologist, who is 91 years old, and told me he would retire by the end of next year. And his office called last week and told me that next week. So I need to get a referral to a neurologist in the Tucson area, who I'd like to see probably once a year and have on my speed dial if something goes haywire. But I'm not looking for a doctor who's going to say, go get an MRI, get this and get those and read all those reports and tell me I've got MS. All right. The other guy school, and I'm not looking for miracles. I just want to maintain what I've got, and I think it's going to be difficult finding an older doctor who's not all about getting tests and put myself under. I don't care about the radiation, but the out of pocket for that kind of stuff could be very expensive. And if anybody knows of a neurologist, it's not just a neurologist; it's an MS neurologist that we all have to see, and that'll be challenging. So I'll let you know next time how I did.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I can do for you, and I'll drop a line to my Steve Wool, who is one of the best PCPs, internists in Tucson, and I'll ask him who he would recommend for you as a neurologist, as an MS neurologist. And
Great. Thanks,
you know, what I cannot do is guarantee that it won't be somebody who wants you to do tests or doesn't want you to do tests, but at least you would know that it was a very reputable doctor. The question I have for Frank and Gale and Dan and Jen is, if you were out there seeking a new doctor today, what would you be looking for? What are the criteria that are important that you can point out to Mike in him selecting a new doctor?
It's real simple. I want an MS specialist.
Okay.
I don't think there's any other way to do it. Going to a neurologist isn't the right thing to do. Just a generic neurologist. They've got so many things that they're treating. You have to go to somebody that's an MS specialist.
Yeah. Well, my doctor is part of a University of Arizona network, so they got lots of people. And you're right. They got to find who's knowledgeable about MS and who's not just out of school. That would be my preference.
Mm-hmm.
The other doctors I've seen, I haven't had an MRI in 15 years. When I was seeing one doctor, another doctor told me to come in with a fresh set of, a fresh disc full of recent MRIs, and that kind of bothered me, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Specialist is the only way to go.
Jen, you had some ideas. What was on your mind?
I was going to agree with Frank that I'm lucky enough to see an MS specialist. And when Dan's neurologist retired, he started to see my doctor, who's an MS, who works like in an MS clinic. So I think that an MS specialist, that's a good call, Frank. And
Yeah.
Gale typed in that her MS specialist is her fourth neurologist, and that each of her doctors unfortunately referred her to another doctor, as they were eliminating other diseases that mimic MS. So now it sounds like she is seeing an MS specialist. So again, Mike, I think we all kind of consensus think an MS specialist, which it sounds like is kind of what you have going on, is the way to go.
Oh yeah, I believe in that.
Well, if you leave it with me for a few days, I'll see if I can add any names to the ones you already have, Mike, and so as to help you out. And Frank, what about you? Anything that's on your mind that you wanted to bring up tonight?
Not at all. It's the holidays. Go enjoy.
Okay. Does that mean Mexican food for Christmas Day as well?
I don't know. I'm going to Kansas City to see my son. So
Okay.
I'll be surrounded by grandkids and, well, I'm going to do that. So
That sounds lovely.
Have a great Christmas.
Yeah, have a Merry Christmas.
It'll be really, really nice. And what about Dan and Jen? Anything that you wanted to raise tonight that we haven't covered?
No, I think we've really talked about a lot. And I think if we can get through the stress and the fun of the next few weeks, we'll have an interesting conversation in January. Just,
Yeah.
to reflect back on that.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we hope, Mr. Pettypool, that when you talk to us in January, you will have your doctor identified.
Have them identified, get on the waiting list to see them. And by summer, I probably will have seen them.
Don't say that. Don't
I'm still
say
here.
that. I know the feeling.
But that is
Yeah.
reality of neurologists, like MS specialists, 6 months to wait for a doctor is kind
I'll
of.
make sure I get a supply of prescriptions before he goes.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah. Make sure he writes prescriptions through the whole of next year, so that you don't get caught short there. Gail, I did put it in the chat box. You probably saw, but we do have you on our mailing list, so you will get a reminder before the next meeting on the 28th. I think I said of
28th.
28th, yeah, of January. So that, and I also gave your email address to Dan and Jen, so that they can reach out to you if they would like to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will pass the recording on to Dan and Jen and to Carly, and we'll make sure it goes up on our YouTube site for anybody that wants to listen to it. You can go to the Anti-Cancer Foundation YouTube site, and you'll find the recording right there. And Gail, if you're not already, you probably want to be on Dan and Jennifer's blog. So I don't know how you do that, but Dan and Jennifer, why don't you tell Gail how to do that?
Yeah, because honestly, we just we relaunched, we changed the name and have rebranded and everything. So I'll send the new link. So yeah.
Please.
Excellent.
Thank you, Ray.
Send me the new links too, and then we'll be sure that they're on the MS page on our website.
Yeah, because I think we have it so oops, I'm sorry, I put it. Jennifer's I typed it out and Jennifer's it was a private message, so this but no, anything that types into our old address goes to the new website.
Well, I am writing myself a note right now on my to-do lists to make sure that your blog it should be identified, but I may have forgotten to do it, or may have forgotten to ask Jackie to do it. So, but if it's simple stuff like that, I don't have to go to Jackie. I can do it myself. So we'll make sure that within the next couple of days that you are properly identified with your the name of your blog and everything else, so we can get to you. And so, Mr. Pettypool, if you're not on their blog, then you can go and look on our website, or I'll send it to you to make sure you have it too.
I'll see you at the goods, Rick. I don't tend to do many things like social media, blogs, and all that. But thanks everybody for tonight. I learned a lot. I enjoyed this interaction, and Merry Christmas to everyone. And I will talk to you in January.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike.
Good
Merry
talking to you,
Christmas.
Mike.
Goodbye.
Happy holidays to everybody, and we'll speak in January if not before. Okay. Good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Good night.
All right,
Merry
take care.
Christmas.
Merry-
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Nicole.
Thanks.